Three men died, and they're all standing before God, wanting to get into heaven. And he said, so I decided that I'm going to give you a chance to go back as anything you want. And the first man said, well, I'd like to go back and as myself and be 100 times smarter. He said, okay, you're back. Second guy steps up and said, I'd like to be 1,000 times smarter. God snapped his fingers and went back. Third guy steps up and he said, I'd like to be 1,000,000 times smarter. God snapped his finger and made him a woman. Yes, I figured that. See, I learned a long time ago. There's only one thing I can do to bring peace. There's only one thing I can do to get along. There's only one thing I can do that transforms my life and my reality. There's only one thing I can do that brings happiness, and that's to know when to give up. To know when to give up. We have been, for the last several weeks, working on this book, The Power of Giving, and our lessons really have been about giving. And I think that one of the most profound acts of giving, as we wrap that series up today, to understand that one of the most profound acts of giving is the act of giving up. Now, the challenge with that is culturally, it doesn't resonate with what it is that we are taught in our culture about how it is that we achieve and accomplish and how we create success and how we manifest things and how we create our reality and how we think things into expression and how we're supposed to try and be victorious and to conquer and to all of the adjectives and expressions and the way in which we phrase things and the way in which we look at our life and all the motivation. It doesn't fit to give up. Say, I give up. And when I say I give up, it's like that's what we want. It's almost endemic in our DNA to kind of be depressed if we have to say I give up. And yet, the road to happiness, the real road to victory, is knowing when to give up. Now, and the problem is when we say give up, we think that we're a loser and nobody wants to be a loser. And so we have this, still have this stuff going on in me about that, that I struggle with all the time about when it's time to give up. Now, the power of giving, it says, do you want to find more meaning, fulfillment, and abundance in your life? Try giving. Also, try giving up. Now, the authors suggest that we give up foods, or we give up television, or we give up things which create more space in our life in which we can give more productively. So there are things, they reference things that we do in our life that perhaps are eating up our time, and so we don't have the time to give to the things which we might like to give to or would find more meaning in terms of giving. And that's an important component in terms of how we think about this process. But I think there's a much bigger reality that shows up when I read this chapter and I thought about, well, what does that really mean to me and how does it show up in my life and how do I experience it and how do I express it in terms of a lesson on Sunday and how it fits with our spiritual life. Because there's a time when we need to know enough to have the wisdom and the courage to give it all up to God. There's a time when we're trying to do something in our life, we're trying to accomplish something in our life, we're trying to create something in our life, and we just run up against it, don't we? We run up against all the stuff that shows up in the world, all the stuff that we've been patterned to in our life experience, all the stuff that says you can't do it, you can't go any further. And so we're taught to push, but there's a time when we hit that wall, and it's time to know when to give it up. To give it up to God, to hand it over, to say, I've done every single thing I can, now I am giving it to you, giving it to God. And it doesn't matter if someone thinks they're a million times smarter, if you've given it to God. When we give things to God, we stop making comparisons. We stop saying, well, I'm this and they're that, and we stop looking at our lives in terms of living it in relationship to the lives of other people in the world, and we begin to live our life in relationship to what it is that we're here to do in the world, what we're here to create in the world, what we're here to bring into the world. And so the greatest way to be unhappy is to compare ourselves to others, because there's always somebody that's doing something that you want to do better. Seems like it anyway. There's always somebody that does it better or does it in a different way. One of the things that I have to give up all the time is giving up the idea that it's all about me, that my life is all about me, that I get so caught up in, I don't know about you, but I get so caught up in my own stuff, my own sort of sense, that I think, well, it's all about me. So this is about me, and that's about me, and whether my kids graduate from this, it's about me. It's not about them, or somebody else is doing it. It's about me, not them, or whatever it is, it's about me, because it's about how I feel. And so that's one of the things I think that when we begin to move into the space of giving it up, we give up to God all the issues that center around life is about me. Now, it doesn't mean that we're not part of the process of living, or we're not part of the process of creating, but it's not about us. It's not about me. It's about we. It's about the we experience. It's about all of us. It's about how it is that we create a life that works not just for me, but for everyone. Because when we think in terms of how our actions and how our experiences affect the lives of other people, we begin to think in terms of we and stop thinking in terms of me. And so when we show up in any experience and we stop for a moment and we say, okay, I give this experience to God, that this is not about me, that this is really for me, that this experience is for my growth, it's for my unfoldment, it's for my evolution as a human spiritual being. It's for me, it's not about me. So it's about us. It's about all of our experiences. Jesus was a failure for his culture. Jesus failed all the expectations that were set in the context of his culture. That when he came, what was being called forth into being was a warrior Messiah who would come and throw the Romans out of Israel so that they would have their homeland back and their temple. That's what they were calling forth, and here comes Jesus. He shows up. And Jesus was anything about what the expectations of the culture were trying to call forth into being, or what they thought they were trying to call forth into being. Jesus made everybody angry. All the leadership, all he did was make them angry and frustrated. He put them off. He created irresolvable dilemmas for all the leaders because he was out there teaching and preaching and healing and doing all these things, and he was showing them up. And he was accusing them of all these different sorts of dynamics that were, they've died, their religion is dead, they're not living, they don't have any life, all the kind of the adjectives that he used to describe them. He pushed them against the wall. Now, the Messiah was supposed to push the Romans, not them. He was supposed to push the Romans out, but he pushed them out. And what happened was, he was rejected, and a religion was created in his name, but the religion became about him, not about what he stood for. It became about him. And I don't think Jesus would ever have wanted a religion to be, quote, about him. I think he would want it to be about what it is that he taught and believed. Jesus was a pacifist. He did not believe that conflict was appropriate in terms of solving problems. And yet, wars have been fought in his name. He spoke against judgment, and yet a movement came out of him that is often, not always, but often about judgment. It is about condemning others' behaviors, and yet he never condemned anyone's behaviors. He was with all those who we might think of as being on the seedier side of life. He showed up in the presence of them.